Very nice. All right. Well, thanks for joining me this evening. My name's Cory. I'm a senior energy consultant for Dandelion Energy. I've worked with them for almost 3 years now. I actually moved my family from Central Coast, California to Fishkill, New York to work for Dandelion about 3 years ago. They were, I think we had at the time like 50 or 60 customers installed, and pretty new and up and coming technology. But I think as we all have seen, not just in the presentations tonight, but in a lot of what's going around in the world, is that the push towards clean energy, that fight has never been more important than it is today. And so one of the things that we're doing at Dandelion is we are essentially coming up with a solution where you do not need natural gas, you do not need oil, you do not need any combustion whatsoever to heat or cool your home. And much like the air source heat pumps that we just learned about, these ground source heat pumps tend to be a little bit more efficient, and for a couple of reasons we'll talk about why that is. But ultimately, whether it's air sourced or ground sourced, it's helping us to accomplish the same goal, which is electrification. So we're on board with both technologies for sure. Let me see here. So as far as who Dandelion is, we started out in 2016 out of Google's parent company, Alphabet. They had a moonshot program. Excuse me. It is a think tank, basically, where we didn't, by any stretch of the imagination, create geothermal. We just simply wanted to figure out a way to overcome its greatest obstacle when it comes to scalability, which is the upfront infrastructure costs. So the idea was, let's figure out a way to simply cut someone's existing furnace out of the ductwork, utilize all of the existing infrastructure for the home, and then slide our heat pump right in its place, simply land the plumbing, the electrical, and the ductwork. And now you have a heating and a cooling system that does not require combustion. We have a little over 1,000 customers to date. We started out in 2016, moved to New York to kind of prove concept. We really did prove concept and became very proficient at what we were doing. And then we were infused with an additional round of funding, bringing our total funding up to about $65 million, with this most recent round coming from Bill Gates's Breakthrough Energy Ventures. This gave us a really good runway to continue our expansion. So we've broken into several other markets. All of Connecticut we are serving now, Massachusetts, Vermont, and then Western New York, Long Island, and then upstate New York from there. Our president and founder has this saying, I really enjoy this a lot. In the future, when people look back, combusting a fuel inside your house will seem like a weird thing to do. And I meet with so many people on a regular basis, and I am like blown away, coming from the West Coast, that fuel oil was something that we were actually burning in our basements, let alone some of my clients are actually still burning coal in their basements, believe it or not. So moving away from that technology is super important. So in New York and also in Connecticut as well, homes and buildings are the second highest source of greenhouse gas emissions. Transportation being the first, homes and buildings being the second, and then along down the line we go. A lot of folks do look to solar as one of the primary things they can do to address some of the carbon offset for the home. What we find, though, is actually that a very significant amount of a home's carbon emissions come from heating, cooling, and water heating. And so that's really what we wanted to address with Dandelion. The heat exchange process is very straightforward, very simple. What we know to be true is that about 4 or 5 feet below the surface, it's a constant 50 to 53 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on which climate zone you're in. It doesn't matter if it's 110 degrees outside or negative 10 degrees outside. The temperature beneath the frost line is that constant temperature. And for the same reasons why basements don't really require a whole lot of heating and virtually no cooling, it's the same reason why we're able to get a constant baseline out of that that temperature beneath the lawn. And so what we do is we identify a couple places on the property. We're going to drill down typically vertical boreholes, and a borehole is going to be roughly 5 inches in diameter. And we're going to put in a closed loop system that's going to go down into the ground and come back up. And then we're going to fill that loop with a combination of 78% water, 22% propylene glycol. It's a non-toxic antifreeze. And so what happens is that water solution goes down into the ground and it comes back up and goes into the basement, into the heat pump. And from there, that gives us our baseline. We're going to use a little bit of physics, a little bit of chemistry, a little bit of electricity to boost that temperature up to roughly 105 or 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And then simply blow air over 105 or 110 degree coil. That's how we're able to heat the house. In the summertime, the reverse is true. We're actually going to use the ductwork to pull that hot, humid air out of the house. And much like a traditional AC, and we're going to then dump that heat into the ground and bring back up the 50-degree temperature. And then we're going to use a reverse refrigeration process to cool the coil down to roughly 20 degrees Fahrenheit and blow air over the coil that way. This is what a typical borehole will look like. This piping system, it kind of looks like PVC pipe that you would see pretty regularly, but it's actually something called HDPE, so high density polyethylene. It's a lot less rigid, and it actually comes on 2 spools. So when we put it into the ground, we drill the hole first, and then once we have our borehole there, we bring this pipe system together. We bring the loops down. And if you imagine like a straw bent over upon itself with like the loop end at the bottom, and you kind of feed the straw into the hole that way, that's really what we're doing here. So it's one long continuous pipe going all the way down and then coming all the way back up with its first real connection point right up here at the top. So then we'll 90 degree over. We'll then bring those geothermal lines right into the basement. We'll have a return and a supply. We'll seal them up, we'll reinforce them, we'll pressurize them, make sure they don't leak. And then when we're done, we'll bury them. And probably the worst part of the geothermal process is that these are big drill rigs. We're displacing a lot of earth. It does leave a little bit of a mess, but nothing a little seed and topsoil can't fix. Finally, we have the geothermal systems in the basement. Again, the footprint of these is going to be very, very similar to what you would find with a traditional furnace. So you're typically looking at, 2.5 feet wide, 3 feet deep, 5 feet tall for our standard package system, one that would go in a basement. We also have a solution for folks who have, their air handlers up in an attic. In that case, it's basically this package unit, but cut in half, where the bottom half is in the basement and the top half, the air handler, is up in the attic. So we really have a solution that serves all the needs of our clients. And then lastly, one of the nice things about the geothermal system is that it does come with monitoring. So we're able to identify how well the system's performing at all times throughout the year. And that's given us not only a tremendous amount of information that we've built upon so that we can make our systems more efficient, but it also allows us to diagnose potentially, problems with the system before they become catastrophic in nature and the system stops working. And so we don't have to roll a truck nearly as often. And if somebody's got a little problem with their system, they'll call us, or oftentimes we'll call them. and we'll ask them how their system's performing. And they'll say, well, it's actually not producing as much heat as it did a couple days ago. And in one case, we called a client, and they said exactly that. We asked them when the last time they changed their air filter was, and they said, what air filter? And we said, oh, well, it's a good thing we called, because you definitely need to change your air filter a few times a year. But that air filter got clogged. It caused some static pressure to build up, and so without having to roll a truck, they changed the air filter. The heat was back to working normally, and all was right with the world. That is pretty much it. I'm happy to answer any questions. As far as pricing is concerned, ballpark pricing for a 2,500 square foot home, roughly $150 a month if you wanted to finance it, or anywhere between $18,000 and $22,000 as a net cost after incentives. That's kind of the ballpark range for having these systems installed.